Prologue. The switch called silence. It is quiet. There is no sound. If you listen carefully, at last, you begin to hear only the ticking of a clock. Tick, tick, tick. The internet does not yet exist. There is no email. There are no video streaming services. And of course, the smartphone in your hand has not even been imagined. Yet, within this silence, one man is about to rewrite the future of humanity. 1948. Bell Laboratories, New Jersey, United States. It is a place where brilliant minds from around the world gather, competing to create a new era. In one quiet corner of the building, there is a small office. It is not luxurious. It is not spacious. A single desk, a single chair, a stack of papers, a pencil, air warmed ever so slightly by the heat of vacuum tubes. Outside the window, a gentle summer breeze stirs the trees. Inside that room, one man continues to think. His name is Claude Shannon. He is still in his 30s. The world does not yet know his name. But 100 years from now, people everywhere will live upon the foundations of the ideas he is creating. Only one person does not know that. Claude Shannon himself. Equations cover the pages on his desk. But they are not what he is looking at. He is looking at something much larger. The world itself. He asks himself, what is information? Every day, we exchange words. We say, good morning. We write letters to friends. We laugh over the telephone. A child cries. A bird sings. The wind rustles through the leaves. These all seem like completely different events. But, are they really? Inside Shannon's mind, the world begins to break apart. Words, sounds, letters, images, music, photographs. He separates them into smaller and smaller pieces until only two things remain. Present, absent, yes, no, 1, 0, on, off. The world can be built from only two possibilities. And quietly, that idea begins to take shape. Click. Someone flips a switch. It is only a tiny sound. No one in the laboratory pays any attention. Yet, that tiny sound will come to carry enormous meaning in human history. Until then, people believed that information was meaning itself. An important letter carries meaning. Words spoken to someone you love carry meaning. A government's command carries meaning. So information was believed to be meaning. But Shannon saw something different. He asked, what is meaning? And then, is meaning really necessary for communication? Imagine a book written in a language you cannot read. You cannot understand a single word. And yet, you can still send that book. From New York to California. You do not understand its meaning. But the letters still arrive. Music is the same. The performer pours emotion into every note. But as the music travels through a telephone wire, emotion does not flow through the wire. Only changes in electrical signals do. In other words, communication does not carry meaning. It carries difference. At that very moment, everything inside his mind becomes one. If this idea is true, then letters, music, photographs, moving pictures, even technologies that have not yet been invented, can all be transmitted by the very same principle. No one realizes it yet. No one knows that the theory taking shape inside this quiet room will one day become the foundation of artificial intelligence, space exploration, the internet, video streaming, and even this very moment, as you listen to this voice. But before we continue, let us turn the hands of the clock back, just a little further. 1916, the American Midwest, the state of Michigan. There is a small town where winter quietly blankets the streets with snow. Gaylord. It is there that a little boy is born. His name is Claude Shannon. This boy is a little different. While his friends spend their afternoons playing baseball, he sits alone in the corner of a garage, taking apart old clocks. One screw at a time, one gear at a time. He stretches the springs. He studies every broken piece. How does it work? That single question is his favorite game. His father is a judge and a respected leader in the community. His mother is a schoolteacher. Both believe deeply in the value of education. But the place where Claude learns the most is not the classroom. His real classroom is the garage. There is a broken radio, an old bell, batteries, copper wire, loose screws, To most people, they are nothing more than junk. But to the boy, they are treasures. The soldering iron grows hot. Metal begins to melt. Its familiar scent fills the room. A thin ribbon of smoke slowly rises into the air. The boy smiles, not because anyone is watching, not because he wants praise, simply because he is having fun. It is not that he wants to repair broken things. He wants to understand why they work. That alone is enough. One day, he begins building a model boat that can be controlled by radio. Today, such a thing is ordinary, but in the 1920s, it feels almost like magic. He grips the transmitter. He presses the switch. Click. Far across the pond, the little boat slowly changes direction. To the right, to the left, then right again. Something invisible travels through the air, without ever being seen. The boy cannot take his eyes off it. There is nothing visible in the air. No string, no rod, nothing connecting his hands to the boat. And yet, the command arrives. That day, he senses something for the very first time. There are paths in this world that cannot be seen. Years later, he will describe those invisible paths with mathematics. But for now, he is only a boy, standing beside a quiet pond, completely captivated by the little boat cutting through the water. Chapter 1. The Wind Across Michigan and the First Spark of Invention. The surface of the pond reflects the sky like a mirror. Whenever the wind blows, small ripples spread across the water. A single model boat glides quietly over them. The boy holds the transmitter. With the slightest movement of his fingertips, he nudges a tiny lever. Instantly, the distant boat turns, exactly as he commanded. Invisible, yet undeniably connected. That strange feeling becomes deeply engraved in Claude Shannon's heart. Most people fear what they cannot see, but Claude is different. To him, the invisible is the most beautiful thing of all. Electricity, magnetism, sound, and information. None of them can be seen, yet all of them are undeniably real. Again and again, the boy steers the little boat. Right, left, stop, forward. As he watches, a new thought quietly appears. What if I could send more commands? Would they travel even farther? Could the boat perform even more complicated movements? No one knows the answer. And that is exactly what makes it exciting, or so he believes. At school, the teacher writes answers on the blackboard. Students memorize them. They write them on a test. They receive a grade. But Claude's curiosity lies somewhere else, not in the answers, but in the question, why? Textbooks describe a world that someone else has already discovered, but the truly fascinating world is the one that no one has found yet. When he returns home, he heads straight for the garage once again. His father smiles with quiet amusement. Working on machines again? His mother calls after him with a gentle laugh. Be back before dinner. He never answers. He is already opening his toolbox. A screwdriver, pliers, a hammer, thin copper wire, a tiny electric motor, dry cell batteries. To the young boy, these are musical instruments. Every time he joins two parts together, it feels as though the world begins to sing, just a little more. One day, while taking apart a broken radio, he notices something curious. The machine looks incredibly complicated, and yet, every single part is astonishingly simple. Electricity flows. It stops. It flows. It stops. Nothing more. And yet, through that simple repetition, music can be heard. A human voice can travel. News from far away can arrive. How strange, the boy whispers. The more complicated something appears, the more likely it is that a very simple rule lies hidden beneath it. That thought will remain at the center of his thinking for the rest of his life. Hundreds of gears, thousands of wires, millions of letters. No matter how complex something may seem, if you keep looking, you can always find a simpler rule underneath. That becomes his quiet belief. As the years pass, Claude enters high school. He is an excellent student, but he is never the kind of student people call a genius. He is not the most popular. He is not the teacher's favorite. There is only one difference. Whenever something captures his curiosity, he explores it more deeply than anyone else. Mathematics, physics, electricity, machines, cryptography, logic. To most people, they are completely different subjects. But to Claude, they are all connected by a single thread. The world is one. That feeling has never left him, not since he was a little boy. 1932. Claude Shannon enters the University of Michigan. He is still in his late teens. A young man, full of hope. The university is nothing like the small town where he grew up. More students, more professors, more books, more ideas. But the place that fascinates him most is not the library, it is the laboratory. Inside the laboratory, there are experimental machines, electrical wiring, relays, switches. He could spend hours there. Day quietly becomes night. The sky outside grows dark. Still, he keeps working. His hands never leave the tools. One evening, a friend says, "Aren't you going home?" Claude smiles. Just a little longer. That little longer often turns into several hours. At the university, he studies mathematics as well. There, he encounters the work of a remarkable thinker, the English mathematician, George Boole. Boole created a very unusual kind of mathematics. Not mathematics of numbers, but mathematics of logic. True, false, yes, no, on, off. A system built from only two possibilities. Many students find it too abstract, too difficult to imagine. But Claude sees something entirely different. He pauses. I've seen this before. True, false, on, off. Electricity flowing, electricity not flowing. They're the same. In that instant, all the scattered pieces that have filled his mind since childhood come together. He is not yet certain, not completely, but something immense is beginning to appear. Perhaps the world is far simpler than anyone has ever imagined. As graduation approaches, one of his professors makes a suggestion. Why don't you continue your studies at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology? The Massachusetts Institute of Technology, better known simply as MIT, one of the world's greatest centers of engineering and scientific research. For a young man, it is the opportunity of a lifetime. Claude quietly nods. There are moments in life that only reveal their importance when we look back years later. The kind of day when we say, everything changed, right there. For Claude Shannon, this was that day. He leaves the snow-covered fields of Michigan behind. A train bound for Boston slowly begins to move. Outside the window, the landscape gradually changes. The young man does not yet know that one enormous machine is waiting for him, a machine that will inspire, a single paper destined to change human history. Nor does he know that inside that paper, the tiny click of a switch first pressed in childhood will one day echo around the world. Click. The train continues east. Chapter 2. Logic Circuits and a Meeting with Destiny. Boston. The winter air carries a different kind of cold from the one he knew in Michigan. A sharp wind blows in from the sea, whistling softly between rows of stone buildings. 1936. The young Claude Shannon walks through the gates of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. Historic buildings, long corridors, polished wooden floors, the distant hum of machinery escaping from laboratories, the students passing in the hallways, all seem to be chasing difficult equations inside their minds. In this place, not knowing is a badge of honor. Researchers devote their lives to questions that no one has yet answered. With quiet excitement, Shannon steps into the laboratory. There, he encounters an enormous machine. It is called the differential analyzer. The machine fills nearly an entire room. Metal shafts, hundreds of gears, belts, pulleys, rotating discs, and the endless hum of powerful electric motors. Rumble, rumble, rumble. It almost sounds like the breathing of a living creature. At the time, it is one of the most advanced calculating machines in the world. Calculations that would take people days to complete can now be performed by a machine. Most students stand before it, simply amazed by its size. But Shannon does not. He does not look at the machine as a whole. He studies each wire, each relay, each switch. He watches how every circuit comes alive. Click, click, click. He listens to those tiny sounds. To him, the machine is not calculating. It is choosing. Should the current flow to the right or to the left? Should the circuit be closed or opened? Even the most complicated calculation is nothing more than countless simple choices, made one after another. One evening, the laboratory is nearly empty. Outside, night has already fallen. Snow begins to drift quietly past the windows. Shannon sits alone, studying a wiring diagram. Sheets of paper cover the desk before him. A pencil rests in his hand. Yet, he does not write. He thinks, what if? What if mathematical logic and electrical circuits are actually the same thing? At that instant, a flash of insight races through his mind. True. Current is flowing. False. Current is not flowing. That is all. He suddenly rises to his feet. No one else is in the room, so he speaks aloud, without realizing it. I've got it. Two worlds that everyone believed were separate, mathematics and electrical engineering, have never truly been separate at all. Mathematicians reason with symbols. On paper, engineers build circuits with wires and switches. But in the end, they're doing the very same thing. Filled with excitement, he begins writing furiously. A line, a circle, an arrow, a logical expression, a circuit diagram. He writes, erases, writes again. The night grows deeper. The clock slips past midnight. Only the warmth of the vacuum tubes remains in the laboratory. His pencil grows shorter. Tiny bits of eraser cover the desk. Still, he does not stop. No one has asked him to do this. There is no deadline. No one is waiting for the result. He continues, for one simple reason. The structure of the world is beginning to reveal itself. A genius is not simply someone who thinks faster than everyone else. A genius is someone who can love a single question longer than anyone else. Claude Shannon loves that question with all his heart. Several weeks later, one of the professors in the laboratory picks up the manuscript. His name is Vannevar Bush, one of the most respected researchers at MIT. Quietly, he begins to read. One page, then another. The room is silent. At last, he reaches the final page. He lowers the paper, and for a long moment, he says nothing. Snow continues to fall. Outside the window, the only sound is the soft hum of the heating system. Finally, he slowly raises his head. He cannot finish the sentence. It is supposed to be a master's thesis, but what lies before him is something else entirely. It is an invention. A single young man has built a bridge between two worlds that no one had ever thought to connect. Years later, this thesis will be hailed as the most important master's thesis of the 20th century. But on that day, Claude Shannon himself has little interest in such recognition. He leaves the laboratory. The cold night air brushes against his face. He pulls the collar of his coat a little higher and begins walking home. Streetlights glow softly along the sidewalks. Overhead, telephone wires stretch across the night sky. He pauses and looks up. Electricity is flowing through those wires. But is electricity really what is flowing? No. Human thought. Ideas. Knowledge. Information. The word is still vague. Its meaning, not yet fully formed. But the seed has already taken root. Information. What is it? Can it be measured? Can it be protected from being lost? That question will not merely transform his own life. One day, it will transform the future of humanity. But before that can happen, the world itself is moving toward war. Far across the Atlantic, a shadow begins to spread over Europe. Day after day, newspapers carry headlines filled with growing tension. Soon, information will no longer exist, only to bring people together. It will also become a weapon capable of saving lives or taking them away. And Claude Shannon, as though guided by destiny, will soon walk through the doors of a place unlike any other. Bell Laboratories, a sanctuary of knowledge, a place where the future is quietly being invented. Click. Another switch is pressed, and the world has already begun, a journey from which there is no turning back. Chapter 3. The Labyrinth of Codes and Words That Fell Silent. 1941. The world is trembling. Across Europe, the flames of war continue to spread. Over the Pacific, a dark shadow begins to fall. Each morning, newspapers arrive filled with reports from the front. Borders shift across the maps. And with every change, countless lives are changed as well. But the thing moving most fiercely through the war is not soldiers. It is information. Orders, reports, battle plans, encrypted messages. They cannot be seen. Yet a single transmission can determine the fate of an entire nation. During this time, Claude Shannon returns once again to Bell Laboratories. Bell Labs, a place where the world's greatest minds gather. Telephone systems, radio communication, electronic circuits, mathematics, physics, every discipline, working together, under one roof, to build the future. Walk down one hallway, and a physicist is studying new materials. Next door, communications engineers search for ways to reduce noise in telephone lines. Upstairs, mathematicians fill blackboards with endless equations. Each person pursues a different problem, yet somehow, every discovery finds its way into someone else's work. Knowledge creates more knowledge. That is Bell Laboratories. The assignment given to Shannon is classified. He is not allowed to discuss it. Documents cannot leave the building. Conversations held inside the laboratory must never be repeated outside its walls. Even silence has become part of the job. The subject before him is cryptography. A code is not simply a secret language. It is a way of hiding the truth. Imagine a simple sentence. The weather is beautiful today. Anyone can read it. Anyone can understand it. But suppose each letter is rearranged, or replaced by numbers, or transformed into symbols. Suddenly, the message becomes meaningless to everyone except the intended receiver. The message arrives, but its meaning does not. That is encryption. Day after day, Shannon immerses himself in the world of codes, breaking them, protecting them, designing them, hiding them. Here, mathematics comes alive. A single equation, a single theory, can save lives, or take them away. He understands the weight of that responsibility, quietly, without complaint. One day, he is escorted into a secure room, a heavy steel door, armed guards, multiple locks. Inside stands an enormous machine. Its name is Sigsaly. At the time, it is the most advanced, secure voice communication system ever created. Its mission is simple: to protect conversations between two leaders separated by an ocean. British Prime Minister Winston Churchill and the President of the United States, Franklin Roosevelt. Their voices must never be overheard. Today, encrypted communication is ordinary. Our smartphones, our online banking, even our private messages, all protected by cryptography. But in those days, it was an achievement no one had ever accomplished before. The human voice is astonishingly complex. Its pitch changes, its volume changes, its rhythm changes, even emotion changes the way it vibrates. To send all of that, securely, across the world, was far more difficult than anyone had imagined. Shannon studies the machine. Vacuum tubes glow with a warm red light. Bundles of cables stretch in every direction. Motors turn quietly. Hum. The deep vibration fills the room. He begins to wonder. What is a voice? People say, "I love you." They say, "Thank you." They say, "Goodbye." Yet inside a communication line, love does not travel. Sadness does not travel. Hope does not travel. Only electrical signals. Or perhaps, not even electricity itself. What truly travels is change. The voltage rises, slightly, then falls. The difference is all that moves, which means communication does not carry meaning. It carries difference. That realization shakes him to his very core. That night, the laboratory is almost empty. Only a few lights remain, glowing softly, along the long corridors. Beyond the windows, the world is swallowed by darkness. Shannon sits alone, at his desk. A blank sheet of paper lies before him. His pencil rests quietly in his hand. He does not write. He simply thinks. What if every trace of meaning were stripped away? What would information be then? What if a love letter, a military command, and the laughter of a child could all be treated in exactly the same way? What is the one thing they all have in common? He closes his eyes. Inside his mind, words begin to disappear. Thank you. Gone. Help me. Gone. Advance. Gone. At last, only one thing remains. A choice. Countless possibilities exist. One of them is selected. And in that instant, the world changes. Imagine tossing a coin. Heads or tails. Before it lands, both possibilities exist. But the moment you open your hand, only one remains. In that single instant, you have gained one piece of information. Information is the moment when the fog of uncertainty clears. Again and again, Shannon pictures that image inside his mind. When the world is covered in fog, you cannot see the future. Should you go left or right? No one knows. Then, the fog begins to lift. One path becomes clear. That is information. Quietly, he picks up his pencil. Scratch. Tiny letters begin to appear. Across the page. Words the world has never seen before. Information reduces uncertainty. The moment he writes those words, he has no idea what they will become. One day, they will form the foundation of artificial intelligence, data compression, satellite communication, the internet, smartphones, and even the technology that is carrying this very voice to your ears. The world is still at war, but inside one silent laboratory, another revolution is quietly beginning, a revolution that will outlive every battlefield. Click. Another tiny switch has been pressed, and once again, the future begins to move. Chapter 4. A single measure for the entire world. Every war eventually comes to an end. No storm, no matter how violent, lasts forever. No night, no matter how long, can endure forever. But the greatest changes in history rarely begin on the battlefield. More often, they begin at a quiet desk. 1948. Summer. Bell Laboratories. Outside the window, cicadas fill the warm afternoon air with their song. The hallways of the laboratory look no different than usual. Researchers move from room to room. Papers are carried from office to office. Telephones ring. Everyone is busy with the work before them. Yet in one small office, hidden away in a quiet corner, Claude Shannon is finally preparing to answer the question that has followed him for years. His desk is covered with page after page of handwritten notes, eraser shavings, a pencil worn almost to the end, a cup of coffee, gone cold long ago. Every page bears the marks of countless revisions. He is in no hurry. A truly original idea cannot be rushed. It must be questioned, taken apart, rebuilt, again and again, until only the truth remains. That is the way Shannon works. A breeze slips through the open window. One page of the manuscript lifts gently and flutters in the air. Across the top of that page is a single word. Bit. Only 3 letters. A remarkably small word. Yet one day, it will appear in dictionaries all over the world. What is a bit? Imagine standing before your front door. You insert the key. The door opens, or it does not. Only 2 possibilities. You look at a traffic signal. Go. Stop. 2 possibilities. A light switch. On. Off. Again. Only 2 possibilities. The world is filled with situations that can exist in only one of two states. Choosing between those two possibilities is one bit. Shannon realizes something extraordinary. If every kind of information can ultimately be expressed through these simple choices, then, for the first time, information itself can be measured. It is an astonishing idea. Until then, people had no ruler for information. Knowledge has no weight. Love has no length. Music has no volume that can be measured with a ruler. There was no unit. But if information is nothing more than a series of choices, then it can be measured. For the first time in history, Shannon is creating a measuring stick for information itself. He sketches a small diagram on a sheet of paper, a single branch, splitting into two, then each branch, splitting again and again, like the branches of a growing tree. A straight road offers no choice, but a fork in the road changes everything. Left or right. At that moment, information is born. That is how Shannon sees it. Imagine deciding what to eat for breakfast, bread or rice. The example is simple, but the principle is the same. The more choices you have, the greater the uncertainty, and the moment you choose, that uncertainty disappears. Information is the moment uncertainty vanishes. Then Shannon takes one step further. If information can be measured, then communication itself must also have limits. How fast can information be sent? How accurately? How much noise can a communication channel tolerate before information is lost? Surely, all of these things can be calculated. No one had ever looked at communication this way before. At that time, most engineers relied on experience. This cable should be thick enough. This method will probably work. Probably. Communication depended on intuition, on trial and error, on experience. But Shannon wanted something different. Not probably. He wanted, certainly. He wanted to build a world where communication could be proven with mathematics. His thoughts turned to noise. When you listen to the radio, sometimes you hear a harsh hiss. On a telephone call, voices may suddenly cut out. On old television sets, the picture might break apart into flickering static. Most people accepted these things as unavoidable. But Shannon quietly shook his head. Are they really unavoidable? Even when noise is present, perhaps the original message can still arrive intact. If only we send it a little differently. Add a little extra information. Leave clues that reveal where errors have occurred. Build the message so that even if part of it is damaged, it can still be restored. Today, these ideas seem perfectly ordinary. The internet, smartphones, deep space probes, hard drives, cloud computing. Every one of them stands upon this very principle. Yet the journey began here, in this quiet room. There are no cheering crowds, no newspaper reporters, no television cameras. History rarely announces itself. When it begins in silence. At last, Shannon writes the final sentence, the mathematical theory of communication. His paper is not easy to read. It is not a novel. It is not philosophy. Page after page is filled with equations, definitions, proofs, logical arguments, carefully built, one upon another. Yet folded within those pages lies the future. Quietly, he sets down his pencil. Tap. That tiny sound is the only thing heard in the room. For a long while, he simply gazes out the window. Summer sunlight, trees swaying gently in the breeze, the endless song of cicadas. The world appears exactly as it did before. And yet, far beyond what anyone can see, the gears of civilization have begun to turn. Click. The tiny sound, heard that day, inside Bell Laboratories, will one day echo across the entire world. Every time you press the power button on your smartphone, every time your computer starts, every time a message is sent, every time a satellite receives a signal, high above the earth. Each of those moments is another echo of that first, quiet click. But Shannon himself never boasted about the future he had made possible. On the very evening he finished the paper, he did not attend a celebration, he did not hold a press conference. Instead, he went home, to his garage, because another kind of play was waiting for him there. Chapter 5. The Intelligence of Play. It is evening. Claude Shannon returns home, after another long day, at Bell Laboratories. Click. The front door closes quietly behind him. The house is peaceful. Most people, after spending an entire day wrestling with equations, would head straight for a study, sit at a desk, read another paper, search for another answer. But Shannon does something different. He walks to the garage, the same small workshop that has been his sanctuary since childhood. Tools line the shelves. Stacks of lumber lean against the wall. Boxes overflow with gears, electric motors, old radios, chains, pulleys, metal rods. To anyone else, it looks like a cluttered storage room. But to Claude Shannon, it is the freest place in the world. Research comes with deadlines. Papers demand precision. Every conclusion must be proven. But play demands nothing. And because it demands nothing, it allows everything. Shannon understands that the most original ideas often begin as play. 3 small balls rest upon the workbench. Red, blue, white. He picks them up, one by one. One, then another, then the third. With a gentle motion, he tosses them into the air. One graceful arc crosses another, then another. The balls drift effortlessly, from his right hand to his left, then back again. Always the same height, the same rhythm, the same timing. They fall, almost exactly, where he expects them to. To an observer, it is simply an impressive juggling act. But Shannon is watching something else. A pattern. Just as one ball reaches its highest point, another is released. If the rhythm slips, even slightly, everything falls apart. Communication works the very same way. Send, receive, send, receive. Lose the rhythm, and the connection is broken. Maintain it, and information flows without end. For Shannon, juggling is never just a hobby. It is an experiment, a way to feel the hidden laws of the universe with his own hands. Soon, 3 balls become 4. 4 become 5. Sometimes, the balls become burning torches. Flames trace brilliant arcs across the evening sky. Most people would think, it's dangerous. Shannon simply smiles. It is all right to fail. It is all right to drop them. It is even all right to get burned. Because play is the one place where failure has no penalty. One day, he begins building another strange invention. A slender metal rod, a tiny electric motor, gears, a chain. Hour after hour, he carefully assembles each piece. When it is finally finished, his family stares at it in confusion. What is it? Shannon smiles, almost shyly. A machine that serves no purpose. And he means exactly that. He presses a button. A long mechanical arm begins to move, very slowly. Click. The gears begin to turn. Creak. The arm rises. Clunk. Finally, after all that effort, it reaches one small switch. Click. It turns itself off. That is all. The entire machine exists for one purpose only: to switch itself off. The people watching burst into laughter. What on earth is the point? Shannon laughs too. There isn't one. I built it because it amused me. Later, the invention would become famous as the ultimate machine. Perhaps the most wonderfully useless invention ever created. And yet, within that little machine lay everything that made Claude Shannon who he was. Efficiency alone does not enrich the world. Usefulness alone does not make people smile. It is play that gives birth to truly new ideas. The same was true Inside Bell Laboratories, even in the middle of the most serious discussions, Shannon would suddenly begin to laugh. What if we looked at it this way instead? Sometimes that single remark was enough to free an entire project that had been hopelessly stuck. His colleagues knew the pattern. Whenever Shannon started smiling, a new idea was probably about to appear. A solemn face alone has never changed the world. A child's curiosity has. One day, a student asks him a simple question. Professor, how can I become more original? Shannon thinks quietly, for a moment. Then he answers, if something fascinates you, don't stop. That is all. A remarkably short reply. Yet within those few words rests the story of his entire life. The little model boat on the pond, the broken radio, the old clock taken apart piece by piece, the giant calculating machine, information theory, juggling. Not one of them began with obligation. Every one of them began with the same simple feeling. This is interesting. Night falls. Shannon switches off the light in the garage. He puts away his tools, returns the juggling balls to the shelf. Then he looks up at the sky. The stars have appeared. It is a quiet night. Far above, countless stars shine across the universe, each one sending its light across unimaginable distances, for years, sometimes for centuries, before it finally reaches Earth. A thought crosses his mind. Is starlight also information? A beam of light, released long ago, traveling through space, until, at last, it reaches our eyes. If that is true, then perhaps the universe itself is one vast act of communication. He smiles quietly, not because he has found the answer, but because the question itself is beautiful. Claude Shannon never thought simply because answers existed. He thought because thinking was joyful. That was the man, Claude Shannon. But no matter how extraordinary a human mind may be, time never stops. Even the brilliant mind that spent a lifetime exploring information would one day enter a long, quiet twilight. Click. Once again, the hands of the clock move forward. Chapter 6. The Quiet Twilight and the Memory of Information. The hands of a clock move so quietly that no one notices. One day, then another. Spring gives way to summer. Summer fades into autumn. Autumn yields to winter. And with every passing season, the world changes. Computers begin appearing. In offices, electronic machines take on work once done by hand. Televisions become a part of everyday life. And before long, the word digital quietly finds its place in ordinary conversation. People marvel at the convenience. Press a button, and calculations are complete. Speak with someone thousands of miles away. Store photographs. Listen to music again and again. With every new invention, the world walks a little farther along the map that Shannon drew. Yet the man who drew that map continues to live, much as he always has. Fame holds little interest for him. Awards mean very little. When a lecture ends, he goes home, walks into the garage, builds something, laughs. For him, that is enough. One day, a student approaches him, holding a book. Professor, would you sign this for me? Shannon smiles, with quiet embarrassment. Of course. He writes his name, with a few effortless strokes, then hands the book back. The student walks away, beaming with happiness. Watching him leave, Shannon quietly says, almost to himself, the theory belongs to everyone. In those few words, his entire life is reflected. Knowledge is not something to lock away. It exists to be shared. Information is no different. Only when it reaches someone else does it truly matter. The years continue to pass. The pace of the world grows faster. Semiconductors improve. Integrated circuits are born. computers leave the laboratory and find their way onto office desks, then into people's homes. Communication networks expand. Submarine cables link continents together. Satellites circle high above the Earth. Calling someone on the other side of the world is no longer extraordinary. Information begins to flow like water. And yet, with quiet irony, something else begins to happen, not in the world, but inside the mind of the man who understood information more deeply than anyone else. Memory. Yesterday becomes harder to recall. A familiar name takes longer to find. Appointments are forgotten. At first, it seems ordinary, something that happens to everyone. But slowly, the fog grows thicker. Alzheimer's disease. A disease that slowly steals the memories of a lifetime. What a quiet irony. The man who discovered how to measure information begins to lose the information within himself. Life can sometimes write its deepest stories without speaking a single word. He sits quietly beside a window. Outside, the wind stirs the trees. One leaf falls, then another. He watches them for a long time. He speaks less and less. But his eyes have not changed. They are still the eyes of the curious little boy who once wondered how the world worked. One day, his family brings him an old photograph. The little radio-controlled boat. The laboratory. Juggling. Smiling beside his students. He studies the photographs for a long while. Then, a gentle smile appears. Perhaps he cannot remember every detail. But somewhere, deep inside, a warm light still remains. Information is not only what can be stored. It is warmth, a smile, a familiar voice. Some things cannot be measured by numbers. And perhaps that is where we discover one final truth. Shannon separated meaning from communication. For communication, meaning was unnecessary. But for life, meaning is everything. A bit connected the world. But what continues to connect one human being to another is what lies beyond the bit. That is why Shannon's theory has never been cold. Beneath its elegant mathematics flows a profound faith in humanity. If a message can be delivered faithfully, people can understand one another. That quiet belief runs silently beneath the foundation of information theory to this very day. In February of 2001, Claude Shannon quietly reached the end of his remarkable journey. He was 84 years old. Newspapers around the world carried the news. The father of information theory has passed away. Researchers everywhere spoke of his extraordinary legacy. But if Shannon himself had been able to read those headlines, he probably would have smiled, just a little, and said, "Oh, that's making far too much of it. I was simply having fun, thinking about interesting things." That was Claude Shannon. But the story does not end here. Its true ending begins right now, because the final protagonist of this story is not Claude Shannon. The final protagonist is you, the one listening to this voice. Epilogue. The bell that will never stop ringing. It is quiet. The story that began inside Bell Laboratories has traveled through time to arrive at this very moment. Where are you as you listen to this voice? Is it morning? Is it night? Are you sitting on a commuter train, driving along a quiet road? Or perhaps you are alone, with the lights dimmed, your eyes gently closed. Wherever you may be, one truth never changes. This voice has reached you as information. A microphone turns vibrations in the air into electrical signals. Those signals become numbers. The numbers become pulses of light, racing through submarine cables. Beneath the oceans, they pass through satellites, across wireless networks, into the device, in your hands. And finally, they become sound. Once again, if even a single piece of that information had been lost along the way, you would never have heard this story. But it arrived. Perfectly. Hidden inside that simple word, arrived, is the mathematics Claude Shannon devoted his life to discovering. Think for a moment about everything you have done today. You unlocked your phone. You sent a message. You searched for an answer. You watched a video. You listened to music. You spoke with someone far away. Each of those moments seemed perfectly ordinary. Yet every one of them exists because one man asked a question that no one else had thought to ask. What is information? It is such a simple question. And yet, its answer changed civilization. Today, artificial intelligence learns from information. Spacecraft cross the solar system, guided by information. Doctors save lives with information. Scientists search the origins of the universe through information. Even now, as these words reach your ears, you are participating in the very phenomenon Shannon spent his life trying to understand. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson he left behind. The future does not always begin with a grand invention. Sometimes it begins with a quiet question. A question everyone else has overlooked. The little boy who once took apart an old clock never imagined that his curiosity would one day touch billions of lives. He simply wanted to know how the world worked. And because he never stopped asking, the world itself changed. Perhaps someone listening today is asking a quiet question of their own, a question that no one else has noticed. If so, do not let it go. Follow it. Protect it. Stay with it, even when no one else understands why it matters. Because history has taught us something extraordinary. One sincere question can illuminate an entire century. The clock is still ticking. Tick, tick, tick. Each passing second carries new possibilities, new choices, new information. And somewhere, at this very moment, another quiet mind may already be beginning the next revolution. Perhaps it is yours. Thank you for listening. And the next time you unlock your phone, send a message, or hear a familiar voice, travel effortlessly across the world. Perhaps, for just a moment, you will remember the quiet room at Bell Laboratories, the pencil, the pages covered with equations, and one man who quietly asked, "What is information?" Click. Silence. But from that silence, an entire world continues to speak.